Hey guys, this is Blue Forest. So today we're going to go over both Cheetor and Waspinator. I have gotten some questions about the Beast Wars characters, with them being introduced into the game again and with Primal only a few weeks away at this point. So I want to cover Cheat and Wasp, and then I'm sure I will, go over the others more a bit later, probably once we get Primal, which is not far away. So I just want to do an overview of both Wasp and Cheetor and also just kind of give a review of them and my thoughts of them. I have played with both of them quite extensively. So let's go ahead and start with Cheetor. I currently have him at rank 4. I took him up to rank 4 right away just because I've always been a big fan of his. And Cheetor is just a really good character, very fun, with some very interesting and unique abilities that many other bots, in fact, most other bots don't have. Okay, so his SIG is easily one of the best in the game. It's awesome. Okay, Feral Strike is pretty amazing for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it has a high activation rate because he gets it every time he gains a bar of power, which you're obviously doing frequently. Second of all, it has 2 components. And third of all, it's one of those SIGs that is really awesome whether he's at SIG 1 or 100. He does not need to be high SIG at all for it to be super effective. And so with Feral Strike, like I said, every time you gain a bar of power, you're getting Feral Strike for 4 seconds. And the main component of his SIG is the fact that all of his attacks will ignore enemy abilities for 4 seconds. So that will include things like armor, evasion, shielding, any buffs that come up in the opponent. He just ignores all of that, which is super, super useful. It basically is kind of like a giant bonus for your specials because you are usually going to be using specials while Feral Streak is active. It can just come into play and be so helpful in a myriad of different ways. And that's the part of the SIG, by the way. That's exactly the same whether he's at low or high SIG. The other part of the SIG is a crit rate that does go up, right? So at SIG 100, it's, I think, a 40% increased crit rate. And obviously the crit rate is nice, but the fact is that he doesn't need to be high SIG in order for the ignoring of enemy abilities to trigger. And that's what makes Feral Strike such a fantastic SIG, because you can use it over and over again, and there's all kinds of circumstances in which it will be helpful to you. All right. Now, one thing about Cheetor that a lot of people don't know is that he has passive energy resistance, but more importantly, he cannot be power drained at all. A lot of people don't even know this. What that means is that if you have a bot like Prowl, if you take Prowl against Cheetor and you use a special 1, you will do damage to Cheetor, but you will not drain his power. Same thing would be true for, Kickback, Wheeljack, Soundwave, any kind of power draining, power leaking opponents will not be able to drain Cheetor's power. That is a really, really useful sort of defensive ability that he has. That's another reason, by the way, Cheetor can be a great choice to put on Robot Resource on your base, because people bring a bot like Prowl or Kickback and they're not going to be able to drain his power. He does gain a little bit of power whenever he finishes a light or medium combo. I do want to focus on his evasion because it's really, really good. He evades attacks constantly with his dashing and his heavies. He also has a 27% chance at rank 4 that projectiles will miss completely. His evasion, especially on range attacks, is very reliable and will help you out sometimes. Now, his melee crits are great, right? So Cheetor is a scout, so he crits a lot, and he has a good chance to bleed on his crits. And so that means that you will land a lot of bleeds. They're good bleeds, and bleeding opponents generate less power when they're struck. His special 1 is super unique and one of the most useful in the game for a couple of reasons. Number 1, he inflicts bleed all the time, and it's a very strong and long bleed for 8 seconds. But the main reason his special 1 is so useful is because he inflicts repair block, right? This is an ability that very few bots have. Shocky can and so forth, but his Cheetor special 1 is really awesome. He will always inflict repair block, and the opponent will stay repair blocked for as long as they're bleeding, right? So this is going to be like an 8-second repair block, which means that if you use a special 1 against any opponent that can heal, they will not be able to do it as long as they're bleeding. This, by the way, makes Cheetor an outstanding choice for the new AM map because of the fact that all those mini bosses, right, bots like OGM and Sound Blaster and Dinobot, right, they're all on last ditch repair, all right, Scorp as well. And so that means that if you're able to land a special 1 with Cheetor just as they drop to below 20% health, they will not be able to recover all that health that they already do, which means that you will be able to finish the fight faster and it will just be easier for you. His special 2 is also really, really good. It gives him a massive power rate up buff. It increases his own power flow for 12 seconds. And the attack deals up to 50% more damage based upon the opponent's percentage of missing power, which is really just their lost power, how low their power is. His special 3 inflicts and power lock, which is also a really useful ability that a lot of bots don't have, right? So the opponents will be power locked for 10 seconds, and it's a 100% chance. And his special 3 will deal up to 100% more damage depending on the opponent's percentage of missing power. So both the special 2 and 3 can be really monster specials depending on the power of the opponent. So all of his specials are useful and interesting, but most people will focus on his special 1 just because those bleeds are great and the repair block can come in handy against all kinds of bots and mods, and of course, like I said, in the new AM map as well. When it comes to synergies, obviously, as a Beast Wars character, he's going to synergize with all of them. But I also want to mention this little known but also awesome synergy that a lot of people just aren't even aware of, which is Speed Chasers. With Mirage and Sideswipe, Cheetor will gain 40% attack on his next hit whenever he dodges the opponent's attacks, which of course he's going to do all the time. So if you use Mirage and or Sideswipe, you use them with Cheetor, this is a really good synergy that you can get a ton of use out of. So Cheetor also, I will say, I used Cheetor a ton in the old game. He's fast, he's agile. I feel like he does air punch a lot less than other bots, even though all bots do. He's fun to play with. His base damage does take some time to kind of ramp up, right? So he's not the biggest damage bot in the game, but he can still really lay on the damage. He's got really good utility, lots of super useful abilities, and he's just really fun to play with, okay? So now let's talk about Wasp. I did take him to rank 5, and I took him to Sig 100, really just for fun. Wasp is a really good bot if he suits your preferences. He's a little bit more of like a circumstantial bot because he's very range-based. So you've got to be a fan of range-based fighters to really get the most out of him. And he is also a bit polarizing in the sense that he's one of those bots who becomes a lot stronger and a lot different at lower health. So kind of similar to a bot like Motormaster in this way. Some people really like that, some people don't. But Wasp is really good if you like his style, right? So his Sig is basically a revive Sig, right? So whenever he reaches the point to where he would die, he revives, he purifies all debuffs, and then repairs some health. At Sig 100, it's just over 20%. So if you are able to get Wasp to high Sig, he can recover some meaningful health, and you have another chance, basically, to do damage to the opponent and take them down. For this reason, because of his Sig, it did make him a pretty popular option with some players at D100 in the old game because of the fact that he effectively gets a free revive in every fight, right? And so it just gives you that free second chance every single time, right? Some people aren't going to like a Sig like this because obviously he has to die to make use of it, and that means that there are going to be plenty of fights where you don't get to use Wasp Sig at all. But it is helpful in certain circumstances, particularly in really difficult content, where you are, of course, at higher risk of getting into trouble. Now, Wasp is he's really all about his resistance debuffs and his special damage buffs, but I do want to focus on his passive ability because this is where people will have mixed opinions about him, right? So when Wasp drops to 50% health, he gets a significant range speed buff, right? So his projectile speed goes up by 30% for the rest of the fight. That makes him a lot more annoying to fight at that point. Those heavies in particular are flying across the arena. It makes his ranged attacks, which he really focuses on, a lot more difficult to dodge. When he drops to below 25% health, he also gets a special damage buff, which is 29% at rank 5, which means that all specials that he launches will do a fair amount more damage, right? So Wasp is very different at low health compared to high health. So if you don't mind that, or if you actually like that, Wasp could be a good bot for you. Now, when it comes to his resistance debuffs, right, so his ranged attacks will always sting the opponent. They apply a 28% resistance debuff for 2 seconds. His heavies will also inflict a 28% resistance debuff for 5 seconds, and he can also nullify resistance buffs, right? So this makes Wasp really good against tanky bots, but UM in particular. He's great against Ultra Magnus because he can just kind of bleed through all those resistances that UM has, right? It just makes fighting UM a lot easier because UM is always so annoying to fight because he's so tanky. But Wasp is very good against, tanky bots in general for that reason. And Wasp's specials, all of them are actually pretty useful. So his special 1 is interesting in the sense that a lot of people actually don't know that he does have a chance to get precision, similar to Arcee's precision or Drift's precision in the old game, which increases his crit rate and reduces the chance that enemies will evade. So Wasp does have some anti-evasion. Now you have to bear in mind that you can't really rely on Wasp to be an anti-evade bot because it is only a 45% chance and it's only on a special 1. So you're often not going to get the precision buff, but sometimes you will, and that can be helpful if you're using Wasp on, an evade lane or something like that. His special 2 is really, really strong. It's fun too. He inflicts a 28% resistance debuff, and he will also nullify a resistance. And then, of course, his special 3 is also quite big damage, and it deals a very strong burn. His special 3 is also one of my favorites. I think it is one of the coolest animations in the game, right? So, like I said, Wasp is all about his range game. He's a lot stronger at lower health. He's got a SIG that is going to be totally useless in some circumstances and totally useful in other circumstances. So it really depends on your play style. And in terms of synergies, again, he has all the Beast Wars synergies, and he also does have an anti-evade synergy with Windblade and Starscream. Now, again, it's only 25% anti-evasion, so it's not gonna, it's not gonna completely prevent evasion, but it can help you out if you use Windblade and or Starscream. And so when it comes to both Cheetor and Wasp, I would say that particularly if you are planning on using Primal once we get him, right? Because then you can get the full Beast Wars teams with the purification and all of that. Either Wasp and or Cheetor will be very good choices for you. I think Wasp is a little bit more circumstantial. Personally, I like him, but he really does depend on your preferences. Whereas Cheetor, Cheetor just has a lot of utility, and so he's the kind of bot that I think everyone can use. So that's all I have for today, guys. I will leave it there for now. I hope all of you are well, and we will be in touch again next time. I do plan on doing some gameplay of both Wasp and Cheetor, more of it at least, hopefully in the coming weeks. But I hope that this gave you a good overview of both of them. And please do let me know if you have any questions. Take care.